I had the amazing opportunity to interview Riot Zeronena, a community manager for Legends of Runeterra, to ask about their plans for 2023. The topic here was community management and getting the community more involved with Runeterra in 2023. So while I tried to sneak in some other questions, this will be the main talking point. It's amazing to have you on the stream. So before we begin, do you want to introduce yourself first?
I'm the global community manager for lore, and I've been working on lore for about the past 6 months, maybe a little bit longer at this point. But a lot of the stuff that I guess you've kind of seen, I did a patch preview live stream with Plink that was super fun, and then I did a lot of behind the scenes work on Worlds as well this year.
That was actually one of the questions I had. That was the community dev stream that was in September, I think, the last time we had it.
Yes.
I think that was one of the coolest things you guys have done. So I mean, it was one of my questions. I might as well ask it now. What first of all made you guys do that, and is there any plan of ever returning that?
Yeah, so at my previous position, I worked at a different gaming company before Riot, and my bread and butter was kind of running these community streams where we could just get sit and chat with everybody in the community, kind of ask everybody questions and share updates to the games. And since I had that kind of in my I guess in my toolkit, I thought it'd be really cool to kind of bring that back. And then the devs on the team, if you guys are on Twitter, you probably know they're really excited to talk about the game and interact with everybody. So yeah, we brought it out, and then we do have plans actually to bring it back for this next live balance patch that we have coming. So I believe we're planning to do it the Monday before the patch. So yeah, it's gonna come back, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can keep it going.
Okay, and that is the balance update that Rubenzu has mentioned on February 1st.
Yes. So speaking of that,
yeah,
a lot of you guys are online quite often. You've probably seen some of the messaging coming out from Riot and on Reddit of other patches being delayed for other games. So we've been down to the wire, and I've just found out quite recently that it is actually going to delay that patch for Legends of Runeterra too. So it will come out sometime in February. I'm hoping that it will only be a week delay, but we're still kind of figuring everything out.
Okay. Yeah, that is the date that everybody was kind of looking at, and it sucks that it's delayed, of course, because everybody's always looking for some new content. But do you have any details about that? Because I think it's a pretty big question mark for a lot of people what's actually happening. Some people are thinking new expansion, some people are thinking rotation, balance update. But what can we actually expect?
Yes, that is a great question. So it is going to be a live balance patch. It isn't going to be an expansion. Rotation isn't coming yet. So one of the philosophies that we're trying to, I guess, introduce to the community and bring out is more content more often, or rather more patching more often. So there's this is what I'll say. Rotation will come out with the first expansion, and we're going to be releasing some information at the end of the month. There's a couple articles coming about what our patch cadence is going to be like, what competitive is going to be like, and I think you'll be able to figure out when it's coming once those articles are out. So.
Okay. Yeah, I had a couple of streams where I tried to math it out, but week by week, okay, when can we expect a patch? When can we expect an expansion? But that's great to hear. So you said something about those balance updates more often. Is that anything that? Well, let me say it like this. What was the thought behind that? Because I know that in 2022, there was a change where we had, I think, a balance update every month, then an expansion, then another balance update. Is that going to change? And if so, why? What's the thought behind it?
Yeah, I think we're probably going to continue with that methodology of trying to make sure that I think ideally we want it to feel like a fresh game every month. We've also, a lot of people on Reddit have noted, we had some hot fixes that came out that I actually made a post about it on Reddit. It's something that the team is really willing to do if the meta really demands it, but it is very resource intensive to kind of like make those quick pivots. And then since the game is international, sometimes it's hard to get all of the messaging out to everybody around the globe. Like it can feel pretty bad if you don't, find out about it because you're not an English speaker. So those are some of the considerations that we have, but sometimes the meta needs a shakeup. But yeah, but be excited for the article because you will see kind of like how often we plan on balancing, how often we plan on releasing expansions, and just how the next year will shape up.
Awesome. Okay, so that is something to keep an eye out for, especially for me as a content creator, because new cards, new balance updates, because card like Spirits Unleashed that got changed, that's basically a new card. Leona that could change in September, that was also talked about during that stream where you and the other developer went over the changes, basically a new card. Daybreak is the same, but I think that's super exciting. I'm really looking forward to, like you said, less content more often, I guess, in that sense. So another question that I had is that stream specifically. You said that that was something that came from the company you worked at previously, but is that also something that developers like doing? Like, I don't think we see enough posts on Twitter and Reddit from devs that really talk about some changes or what went into designing a card. And I think it's actually one of the most exciting things that we as players, especially like the vocal part of the community, wants to hear. I know it happens a lot when there's like a new card being released, and sometimes I see a couple of posts from some developers like, hey, this is how we got there. But for just balance updates, I think that's really exciting too. Are there any plans to do more of that in the future?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, with the balance updates, I hope that we can do a stream for each of the balance updates. As far as like interacting on Twitter and kind of like giving more thoughts, it's kind of hard because our devs are pretty passionate about like sharing their ideas and what led to those changes. But at the same time, it can also be like it could be like a job in and of itself, like sharing all those details on Twitter. And we want to make sure they're making those decisions and developing all the cards too. So you'll definitely see more interaction. Like one of the areas that I feel like I personally want to interact a little bit more on is the Reddit. Like we've had a couple of feedback posts on the Reddit channel, and we have a pretty good relationship with them. So I'm hoping that we can have some like opportunities there to have some really like targeted discussions around like certain things.
Okay, yeah, that's perfect. I love that. Another thing is on the website itself, the Play Runeterra website, there have been a couple of articles. Like I don't know what the last one was. It might have been on rotation itself, and I think Dan Felder did a couple of them. Are there any more plans on doing stuff like that? Because one of my favorite ones was actually, it must have come out like 2 years ago. That was just like a list of champions. Like, here's how we made Teemo as a card. Here's how we made Ezreal as a card, which I wish you guys actually never did, but that's a discussion for another time, I guess. Something like that for a new expansion, I think would be awesome, and something a lot of people would love to see. Are there any chance of seeing more of that too?
Yeah, we definitely want to do more articles like that. So I think the ones that I kind of helped bring to life were the first one that I did with Steve actually, and it was called like bringing champions to life in Runeterra, which is super fun. And then we did another one with Frank, aka Riot Games, and that one was about kind of like game analysis and like balance and the philosophy behind it. And then Dan Felder made a post on Reddit actually about giving feedback. And then I worked with him and we expanded upon that post because a lot of us read it and we were like, this is so good. Like this is good, like life information. And we wanted to like publish it and make it even more accessible. So like my philosophy behind these articles with the devs is I love giving especially the designers the opportunity to be like, okay, what are you passionate about? Like, what is it about game design that like gets you up every morning to like show up to work? And then once we find that thing, then I'm like, okay, let's figure out like how we can turn this into an article. And I believe if the person writing it is really passionate about it, then people will care.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You can definitely feel that as somebody reading it and as a player of the game, of course. Speaking of the community feedback thing, is there anything that you're looking for as far as like what are you the vocal points of the community? Is there anything you're like, hey, I wish more people would do this, or like I wish this is something we could expand upon as far as those community posts, I guess, on Twitter or Reddit or whatever?
Yeah, I guess taking a page from Dan Felder's article, the biggest thing is like, especially as community managers, like I'm really thankful and lucky that the lore team has devs that are very, very tapped in. Like they're reading Reddit, they're reading Twitter, but like I said before, they're also developing the game.
Mm-hmm.
What's really helpful for me is when I find posts about people kind of discussing something in the game and they're saying, hey, this feels really good because of this, or this feels really bad because of this. And then I can flag that. And like Dan says in his article, and for me especially since I'm not actually designing the game, I can go and I can bring these, I don't want to say problems, but kind of like areas of interest to the designers. And then I can be like, hey, like this is a really hot topic in the community. A lot of people agree with it, or a lot of people maybe disagree with this. And then they can kind of use that information to help build the game or change things.
That is actually really interesting. So what you're saying is you're reading a lot of posts from the community and you're telling the developers like, hey, this is something our players really like or really dislike, and then you kind of pass it along. What's usually like the response you get for something like that from the developers?
Yeah. Yeah, the devs are very, very, very responsive. So a lot of times I'll go to them and I'll be like, guys, these acolytes, this reliquary, it's a little much right now. And they'll be like, yeah, we know. Yeah, we know.
Uh-huh.
Um in that one we did a hotfix. Um yeah, no, the team is pretty tapped in, and when something, enough people are talking about it, um then the team's pretty responsive about doing something. That's another thing too, and across like all gaming, like not just lore, but I think for community managers, a lot of times like we're playing the game and we're kind of like tapped into like what the community's thinking, but a lot of times it's easier to kind of like explain to everyone else, what the community feels when there's a lot of posts about it, or there's a lot of like people talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep talking about it. If reliquaries is driving you crazy, then just, post about it.
All right. Yeah. So if Reddit is like full of posts with this deck is too strong, this card is too strong, then even if it's something that the developers might disagree with, is that still something that you would pass along? Because I can imagine that there's been nerfs in the past. Like, I mean, this is a long time ago, but Fiora from 3-3 to 3-2, and the developers might have thought that from a balance perspective that this was not a problem, that it wasn't broken or anything. But I can imagine that a community manager wants to pass along that info, like, hey, players really, really, really dislike this. Maybe we should do something about it, even if it's not problematic balance wise. Is that also like part of what you do?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think one of the things is there's balance, and then there's also another like hidden metric that I feel like community managers deal in, and that's just like how annoying is this card to play against? Because something could be perfectly balanced and it can also just like really drive you crazy. So sometimes, it's ultimately up to the designers of like what is that perfect balance to hit between like, okay, maybe it's a little bit, annoying to encounter, but it's really fun to play.
Mhm.
Maybe it is you know, the win rate's really high or it's really low. But yeah, I definitely flag all of that because sentiment and just like feeling against playing the card is a really good thing to know about when you're making changes too.
Okay. I don't know if this is something you can share, but is there an example of like the last card where something like that happened? I can imagine it's reliquary, but maybe even like before that or a bigger one.
Oh my gosh. Hmm. You know what? I'll actually say recently the
Hmm.
community has been pretty in touch with like win rates and their, feeling about the card. Like
Hmm.
a lot of the times, I have to say in the past like 3 or 4 months, anytime I've gone to devs about the community kind of feeling uh unhappy about a certain card, usually the metrics have kind of like matched on their side as well.
Okay.
So there hasn't been anything lately that's been like that.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, yeah. No, I will complain about Seraphine and Bar all day, and people tell me, well, it's 48% win rate. But hey, this is exactly where I feel like that would still be information that a lot of players want to pass on. Okay, so moving on from
I
card.
see you, Sunny. You just wanted to mention Bar. I see you.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. No idea. I'm not going to mention Ezreal either for the second time during this interview. Anyway, so another thing besides card balance is cosmetics. A lot of players have asked about, for example, a legacy store, but also the fact that there is maybe less guardians in the event pass. And is there anything that you guys are looking at regarding that, or something that the players can expect?
Yeah, so I have no updates on cosmetics. I'll be blunt with you.
Mhm.
But I have shared a lot of the threads. There was, I believe there's a Reddit thread just the other day talking about like wanting a essentially like a vault or like a personal store with a lot of, they highlighted the card backs
Mhm.
that you can't obtain anymore. And it's an awesome idea. And I've definitely shared it with the team. And it's something that we're interested in, but one of the really hard things is when you're kind of like discussing things that are either in work or that you're thinking about, if you mention it before things are kind of like locked in, then it can be really sad if it doesn't come out the way that you mention it. So I will say that we have our eyes on it.
Okay, that's totally fair. Yeah. Um, so one other thing that I'm moving on from topic to topic is just your kind of day to day regarding community management. What does that look like a day for you?
Yeah. So um I would say I usually log on, and the community management at Riot, it's kind of like a lot of companies. I feel like it's different, but at Riot, I really feel like the community managers have like a hand in a little bit of everything. So we're in a lot of meetings with the different parts of like the lore team. So we kind of know like everything that's going on. Um, so a bunch of meetings, and then also writing patch notes, like preparing articles, and then other stuff like this too. Like if I'm not appearing on stream, usually we're helping organize it, trying to get people in touch. Um, One of the things that we recently did around Worlds, I'm not sure if you guys saw on Twitter, but Dan did a really cool like create a card contest and also ran like a watch party. And then Wisdom did a watch party in Mall of America. So a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is like connecting with people in the community who are doing cool stuff themselves and trying to support them and kind of get them all the information and anything that they need to like make stuff like that happen.
Yeah, the world event was amazing, and just seeing all the surrounding stuff that was happening too was just an incredible sight to see. Like seeing pictures of people just watching the like Aragorn versus Teddy in a bar was mind blowing to me. I thought that was so cool, and it kind of made me feel bad for missing out a little bit. So huge props to that, because that's really what just makes this community feel so alive. I've been part of a League of Legends community for, I don't know, I want to say like 8 years or 10 years until I switched to Runeterra. But the like how tight knit it is, and just how it feels like it's just warm and welcome. And I think, well, it happens behind the scenes, but I figured that community managers have a really big hand in that too, to make all that stuff happen. So what I want to know is, what is your favorite thing that you've done as community manager? Is it that with Worlds?
Oh,
Something
it's
else?
definitely Worlds. Worlds was so cool. Like I had a lot of fun. There's there's been like a few like passionate things that I've slipped in that like make me really happy when people notice them. Mostly like editor's notes. But
Mhm.
no, Worlds was definitely the coolest thing. Like getting to like interact with all of the talent, and then getting to like interact with different members of the community who are so passionate about it. Because like for me, for community management, I really feel like there's so much cool stuff happening in the lore community, and I want to be able to empower that. Like the entire community team wants to like set up everyone in the community that's already doing cool stuff to like do cool stuff even better. But yeah, working on worlds was my favorite thing so far.
Okay. Yeah, I really think it's like last year's world was already like super cool, and this year was somehow better. It was probably one of my favorite events that I've ever had to witness, and doing an entire watch party with it was just amazing. One thing that I actually forgot to ask, and this is kind of off topic, but just to give everyone an idea who we're actually dealing with, what's your favorite card and deck?
Okay, so my favorite card is actually Viego. It's really, really sad when he got nerfed, but it's okay. You know, I will continue to bother Ruben to bring him back to his former glory.
Mhm.
Um, and I know that like Evelyn Viego was really popping off, but I kind of just like a mono like Viego deck. Like I just want to make him as beefy as possible. This is slightly off topic, but I'm a filthy Vayne main in League of
Oh
Legends.
no.
And I was so excited for her to come to lore because like my win rate with Vayne in League is really bad, but my win rate with Vayne in lore is really good. So I feel like I finally had redemption.
She already got nerfed what, twice though? So
She's still feeling pretty strong, you know.
yeah.
I like her.
No, he definitely is still strong. Okay, Viego, yeah. I really like Viego too. It was really sad to see him nerfed to 6 mana. So that's actually a really interesting thing that I want to ask about as well. And I don't know if this is anything you're involved with, but for example, when a community is vocal about something like Viego, and developers know that a new card is coming out for Viego, which in this case was in the form of Shape of Fear, is that also something that's looked at when you're passing along information and they're like, well, there's a new card releasing, so maybe there's extra reason to nerf it? Is that something that comes into the equation?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point because so one of the things like before I started working in community, sometimes I was like, oh my gosh, like what are they doing? Like what is that decision?
Hmm.
It's kind of like you said, a lot of times they'll know that there's going to be like either support coming out or like another card coming out that influences the decision. So a lot of times, I don't want to say a lot of times, but sometimes I don't even know about those things. Like I'll still bring the feedback. You know, I'll still go to Ruben's desk and tell him that Snnuy wants bar nerfed again, but he might know, you know, something else that affects it. So, so yeah, that happens a lot.
Okay, interesting. So is that a conversation you have a lot, where it's like the community is saying this, and then you get a response of, well, we're printing a counter, or we're printing a card that makes it stronger, so maybe you do have a good point. Is that something you deal with a lot?
I would say yeah, especially like with the lore devs. A lot of times, if I do come with anything, a lot of times they already have an answer for it. Like it's been on their radar.
Okay, so it's really just purely like community focus that really is the difference maker, because that's really what your entire workday is like, just keeping up with that, passing it along. I mean, I don't want to say your entire workday, but a big part of it, I'm assuming.
I think a big part of it, yeah, and then a lot of it too is, you know, like writing things for, you know, getting information out there. A lot of these articles that are going to go up, I've written with Matt, who's also on the community team. Um, yeah, and I think one of the other cool things, this isn't a majority of the workday, but we do get to like the entire lore team, even as like a community manager, we do get to play test some of the upcoming stuff, which is one of the most exciting things about the job. I remember I got to test out Vayne before she actually released too, and I was so hyped because I loved
Mhm.
her in League, and she's finally coming to lore.
That's actually really cool. So, um, another question is, when you playtest, do you already like make some notes about, hey, this is how the community might react, and then you like compare them with how they actually react, and then it's like, well, if you look at these notes and then you look at these notes, maybe this is something we could have seen coming for a next release or something.
Okay, so this is yes. So there's one thing about Vayne that was, especially like as like a Vayne main, I was kind of like, like Vayne is, yeah, you've probably noticed in lore, she is like her Sentinel version because that's
Hmm.
where she is now. And I was curious. I was like, okay, like I want to keep an eye on this. Like, if people are going to react like really well to Vayne's outfit. Same thing with Seraphine as well. So there's a couple things where sometimes I'm trying to look at it from a community lens to be like, this might be like really interesting for the community. So we should think about it.
Yeah, it was a really big thing that came up, and then you also see channels like Necrit cover it. Like I think one of the coolest one was Nora, for example. Are there any stories with that, like how Nora would be perceived as a Runeterra exclusive, the first one?
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I was very, very excited for Nora too when she first came out because for me it's the VO. Like the voice lines of Nora are so fun. But yeah, it's stuff like that we usually like flag.
Okay, interesting. So, so what you mean is that when you look at how the community responds to something, is that notes that you pass along then to the developers, like, hey, the community really likes this, like they really like these Runeterra exclusives, or they dislike them, or anything in that sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think we definitely also, when we see how people are reacting, and also let us know, like, hey, like maybe this is something that we would want to explore like deeper in an article or something along those lines too.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I personally really love reading those because that, like, just that whole deep dive into those articles is personally what really got me interested in, like, just doing more like design talks, I guess, on my own channel as content creator too. Like, hey, this is Nora. My girlfriend is even starting like her own lore channel because of Nora. So I really think that you guys did a pretty sweet spot on that. Um, so yeah, that's as far as design and new Runeterra exclusive champions go. But do you have one moment for yourself where you were, okay, this is one I'm really excited about. I want to see what the community says about this too?
You'll have to wait and find out. There's there's one I'm pretty excited about.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll all just have to wait and see what it is.
Okay. You don't have to react to this, but I'm personally really excited about Fiddlesticks. Just saying. Okay, moving on. So, okay. So to go back to the community philosophy one more time, is there anything that really changed over the course of 2022, like from start to finish? More any big changes?
Yeah, I think the team as a whole like really decided like in 2022 that we wanted to really like commit to interacting more with the community and being like a bit more transparent. Like you'll see that in like we tried out the patch preview live stream, and
Hmm.
we're definitely going to bring it back for 2023. And I'm hoping that we're going to be on, like I mentioned before, Reddit more often. This is really kind of the year that I think like we're going to make you know you guys the center of our year. So buckle in. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, definitely. Me as content creator, that's like the best news I can possibly get. So what is the biggest change that happened during 2022? Is that like, was there any like turning point or any big decision you made that we? I mean, usually I'm assuming when a decision like that gets made, we find out really slowly, like over the course of a couple of months. But was there any moment where you were like, this is how we should do this?
I don't think like a moment in particular, but I do think it did really influence the team. We brought Matt onto the community team as well. I want to say at the end of last year, and I feel like he was kind of like the missing puzzle piece for us to be like, okay, like he's the last piece of Exodia to unleash the community monster. So
The final world rune for Rise.
the final world rune, exactly.
Okay, awesome. So most of those decisions and changes are still gonna kind of pan out in 2023.
Yeah. I think you'll definitely start seeing more stuff coming out in the year of 2023. And I think one of the things too is once once these articles come out, like it's going to be a little bit of an info dump for everybody, but I
Mhm.
think once it's out will be a really good place for us to kind of come back to the community and be like, okay, like this is what we're talking about. Like, how do you feel? Like, what do you think about this? And we'll have more opportunities to interact with like you, other content creators. And then, one of the things that I really want to like tell everybody is that everybody, you have a chance to be heard on like our Reddit threads, or if you tag us on Twitter. And we value everybody's feedback.
So would you say that Reddit is the best place to kind of have your opinion be heard?
Honestly, yeah, I think we have a lot of eyes on Reddit and on Twitter as well. But if you do kind of want to get your opinion out there, we check Reddit pretty often.
Okay. Would you say there is a best way to kind of share your feelings or contact, or like really let a dev know, like, hey, or anyone, a community manager, let somebody know, like, hey, this is how we really look at your post and really take into consideration what you say? Is there any best way to do that?
Yeah, so a couple of times we've partnered with the Reddit mods to make like feedback channels, like very specific feedback channels for certain topics. So usually those channels, we go through and read every post and are really attentive to those channels. Um, and then it really depends on like what it is. If you wanted to give like a kudos or something to someone, then you could always, tag them on Twitter, be like, hey, I love the card design. But if you do have like feedback about like a certain system or a certain card that you kind of like want balance, I would just go ahead and put it in one of those Reddit threads. Yeah.
Okay. So one other thing that like you've been kind of letting us know that you want players to be more involved in 2023 are these streams like this one? It's kind of meta. The one we're having right now, is that part of it? And also the Mastering Runeterra and Alor interview, is that all part of the grander plan?
Yes, definitely. That's one of the things that we really want to do is like get, just get devs in front of you guys, the players who make the community. So yes, this is part of the plan.
All right, awesome. I don't really have any more questions right now. I don't know if there's anything that's on your mind that we can still talk about.
I am just curious, what is your favorite deck right now? Like, what are you going to? Yeah.
My favorite deck. I mean, I think the deck I always kind of go back to when I want to just climb and get so OP is Victor Riven. Cosmic Creation is definitely my favorite expansion of all time. Came out at the end of 2021, I think. But if I just want to like meme around, I usually just queue up Time Bomb Printer. That's really the one.
Man, Time Bomb Printer is too like I really want to learn to play Time Bomb Printer and like the Shelf Oak deck that I always see Aikido play, but I'm always just like I'm too like smooth brain for these decks. I just Viego get big. That's my usual deck of choice.
I guess that's also an interesting thing. Do you do you look at like the decks that the community really likes or plays a lot, and then also like maybe we need to design more decks that are like that? Because one thing I noticed is that Kayn Aatrox and the whole Cultist region, it took a really long time to come together. The Cultists were kind of like a question mark, and then Aatrox came out and it was like, oh, suddenly like all the pieces fit together. Varus was already playable with Akshan, but is that something like you release one piece of a champion and the community talks about it's like, where does Alawi go? And then 2 expansions later, you actually get something. Is that something that you have to keep in mind?
I think the team definitely keeps that in mind. Thankfully for me, on the community end, I get to see the chaos unfold of the master plan and see all of the reactions of like, oh, okay, this finally fits. On less of a design answer, but for me personally, a lot of times, like when I first started playing, I only really played like Path of Champions, and I got to a point where I was like, I'm reading all of these opinions, like on Reddit, on Twitter, about what everyone's feeling, and then specifically about like ranked and ladder. And I was like, okay, I need to buckle down and like climb up to masters and like experience this myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was when I really like pulled out. This was back before I was really climbing a lot with Kayn Vayne before Aatrox was released. So to answer your original question, yes, those things are definitely planned. But on my end, I don't really have to worry about it. I just get to watch it all unfold.
Okay, that's pretty cool too. But do you like get the lines where it's like, oh, we're releasing Bard here, and then we're releasing Kill 4 expansions later? Is that something like just in case the community says something like, where the hell does this champion go? Is that something that you keep in mind or that you get like notes from the devs?
Yes, I keep it in mind, but then a lot of times, we don't uh, we don't want to spoil any of the upcoming things. So usually if we see comments like that,
Mhm.
um, we'll just we'll let the community theorize about it and postulate about what could potentially be coming or what the thought is.
Okay, so I'm gonna assume there's somebody responsible for the Celestial Impact getting printed one expansion before a kill, the Bone Skewer one expansion before Pike. Do you do that on purpose to kind of tease what's to come?
Yes, that's one of my favorite things is combing Reddit and being like, okay, did they notice the Easter egg? Like, there's actually
Uh oh. Yeah.
there's an Easter egg out there that I haven't seen anyone notice yet. This one is pretty subtle. It's very, very subtle. Oh, okay. So let me back up. Things like Celestial Impact getting printed like earlier are little Easter eggs that the designers put in, but sometimes when we put out, maybe like articles or we like make like an infographic or something, a lot of time that's like the community team doing that. There is like one small little Easter egg that was planted, that I don't think anyone's picked up on yet. uh I if once the reveal happens, I'll tell you what it is.
Okay, so we can't even get a small hint here while everybody
Nope.
wakes up and starts looking at all the splash
Nope.
art. All right, I know what I'm doing tonight. Inspecting all the splash arts. Oh, I don't actually know if that's where we need to look, but that's where I've noticed that some of the hints are hidden. I think one of the
I will say it's not in a splash art. I will say that.
that's already a really good hint. Thank you. Because I think one of the coolest one was I think it was Targon release where it was the Poro with the spell shield, and then you saw Zoe coming from a portal and like throwing it, but you had to actually open it up to see what was happening. I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah. Our art team is amazing, and that's one of the cool things. Okay, if y'all haven't read Steve Rubin's article, you should check it out. He really goes into detail about how like the design team, the narrative team, and the art team all work together to make all the cards. So that's how you have, like Zolani appearing in Bard's Portal or Celestial Impact coming out like an expansion earlier.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I remember when Bart came out, people were looking at the portal like, okay, this is Shyvana, this is whatever it is, and then who is this? Is this a Darkin? And then 2 expansions later, we were actually able to find out. So that's something like this is more of a lore question, I guess, but that's planned out as well then, because we got like Zolani in the first Darkin saga, and then another Zolani in the third, and we had the whole Rise, Aatrox, kill thing just unfold. Is that something that goes into that planning as well?
So I'm not on the narrative design or art team,
Mhm.
but yeah. I mean, the teams definitely plan that all out. I don't really have any information on how we kind of like landed on that whole storyline, but yeah, definitely, it's all concocted together
Mhm.
as a big team.
Do you know how far in advance you guys plan that? Like how far in advance expansions are supposed to tie it up, or like stories kind of merging together?
Yeah, so uh, we tend to plan stuff out like pretty far in advance. Um, the I don't have the exact timeline, but a lot of times we'll be talking about stuff that can, maybe come out like up to a year later,
Mhm.
which can sometimes be confusing. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, where's the present? What's out right now?
Has anyone ever almost messed up where it's like, oh, we're working on a set or a card that comes out a year from now, but I can't really talk about synergies or something?
No one has ever made a mistake. That would never happen.
Mhm.
No.
I see. I see. So I don't know. I don't think this is something you would work on, but my chat is spamming about the 11-17 stat line from Watcher. Is that also something we'll ever get an answer on? Because that's been a while. I think that's almost been 2 years.
Oh my gosh, I was I was digging on that. I actually don't know. I don't know about that stat line either. I was very intrigued. Okay, it's very interesting because working in community, sometimes there's like little Easter eggs or things that get planted by like an individual designer that maybe sometimes like the wider team doesn't know about, which is very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So for that one, I don't have the answers. I'm sorry. I'll
No,
continue investigating though.
man of the people. That's a true just community fan service there. Finding out about all these things that we would never know. Okay, so I guess if you notice that that's something that the community thinks is cool, is that also something you like pass on? Is like, oh, they really like, this theory crafting about this stat line. Is that something we should do more of?
Oh, heck yeah. Like, I think, you know, releasing champions like thematically and having a little bit of, I guess, anticipation, especially when the cards like come out for like spoiler season, you're like, oh, what can this mean? I think that's fun for everybody, like the designers and the community. So yeah, we definitely pass that feedback.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite things as well. Just seeing the cards that come out, connecting the stories, looking at all the hints. But I definitely have a new goal here to look at that hint that we might have missed.
Yes, yes. If someone finds it, okay. I'm also terrified. Like, I swear, people are gonna go through and like look at these articles, and they're gonna find like a typo or something. So just like, don't drag me for a typo that you find one of these articles. And I will be very impressed if someone does find what I'm referring to.
Okay. The Shuriman Cars one comes to mind immediately.
Man, Shroom cars are cutting edge technology. Like they're really pushing the world forward. They're sand powered cars, very eco friendly. I think it's something that we need.
Yeah, I think so too. They're powered by sand to drive on sand, I suppose. All
Oh
right.
man. Yeah, so I actually have a few minutes, about like 3 minutes or so.
Mhm.
If you wanted to ask like a question from chat, I'll take a question or two in the next few minutes.
Okay, sure. I'll read one out when I see it. There's a lot of questions about the naming for the Darken staff Darken, but I'm just gonna ignore that one. Do community managers share custom card designs with devs?
Man, a lot of the times, usually we usually we don't because sometimes it's hard, right? Like you don't want to you might have like a really cool idea. Like a lot of times I'll share like custom designs for things that are already out because then it's a cool like way to think about it. But for things that are now, you don't want it to be too influenced. It's kind of like sometimes actors on like a TV show don't like read the book that the movie was based on.
Oh, that's actually a really good comparison. Yeah, I can totally see that. Just don't look at it too hard, or it might influence like a future design or something, I suppose. Okay, another question here is animated card arts. Just anything cosmetics and prismatics, I guess.
Animated card arts would be so cool. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll definitely ask and mention it to our cosmetics team that there's interest for animated card arts.
Definitely, yeah, from my side as well. All right, a very important question here from Jay Sensational. What's your stance on Yasuo?
Well, I mean, Yasuo's kind of a goat. He did win a seasonal tournament quite recently. It speaks for itself.
Yeah. Oh, actually, that's also pretty interesting because do you play League of Legends? Do you play Yasuo in League of Legends? You said you were a Vayne player, so I figure Yasuo kind of fits into that category as well.
I do play League. I really tried playing Yasuo and Yone, but a lot of times I tend to hit my 0-10 like power spike on Yasuo really often, and it just wasn't fair to my opponents to keep unleashing Yasuo on them.
Yeah.
No, no, I don't play Yasuo often.
All right. So another question is, I just lost it. Chat was moving too fast. Follower skins, that's the one. I think a big one is the Elise one, where the Worldbreaker Elise summons a Worldbreaker Spiderling, but regular spiders
Ooh.
not. Is that something that was ever passed along?
I'm actually really curious about when people are asking this, are you talking about like also like Evelyn's Huss with like Spirit Blossom? Are you saying like those types of like created card skins like you really like, or specifically like a Cythria skin or something?
I think what Chad means, and this is also a question I have, is if you play a spider like from Val Feast, is there any chance that that skin would also go onto that spider if you're playing Worldbreaker Elise?
I know what you're saying. I need to ask our engineers about this. I don't have any knowledge, but I don't know if there is like a coding thing going on. Um, I'll ask about it. I'll follow up with you on DM after the stream.
That's a deal. I love that. All right. Any update on removing region? Oh, I think Nagata Lock here is asking about cross shard that was disabled 2 years ago, but I also think that's not really something that's that you really
slightly above my pay grade. But no, I do think one of the things like as like a community is like we have a really international community, and I know there's like a lot of tournaments that happen with people from like the EMEA shard or the APAC shard. So that is one of the things that ever since I joined the team, I flagged as like really important to the community, is that we have ways to play with people regardless of like where you are in the world. Like I even know like you, Sonny, you want to come over and play on the Americas server more often. So I will say it is something that we flagged, and I think from a community perspective is pretty important.
Yeah, I guess it's for tournaments mostly that people are trying to like get cards on other accounts. But for me, it's just making content with other content creators. That was a really big deal. So I'm really glad that Riot was able to assist me with that. I guess we have time for one final question, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
This one asks about legendary skins for followers or champion skins. I think we only have one legendary in the game. That's Kaisa with different voice lines. So this question must be: we're getting more of those. Are we getting any for followers? Are there any plans for that?
I'm not sure. I really don't have any updates on the cosmetics side of things. I could take another question though, because I feel kind of bad I wasn't really able to answer that one.
Okay. Do community managers take champ rework ideas seriously? I guess that's not phrased in a perfect way, but do you ever look at champion reworks, I guess, and consider them as like, oh, why would the community want this to be reworked? Is this something we should be looking at? Is this champion frustrating, weak?
I think one of the things to kind of like point out is if the community's talking about it, whether or not I personally agree with it, I still bring it up and I still talk about it. Like I try to remove my own bias of wanting Viego to be a 4-cost 8/8, and I'll bring everybody's opinions to the broader team, like regardless of what I feel. So I think yes, like, but one of the metrics that we do like look at is like, okay, like how many people are talking about it. Like if I'm reading Reddit and someone has been, like downvoted minus 20 times with their champ rework idea, then that's probably like an indication that a lot of people aren't really agreeing with the champion rework. But if like 400, 500 people have like liked a champion like rework idea, or like a desire for a rework, then regardless of whether or not I love that champion, I'll still kind of like flag that to the greater team, be like, hey, people are really talking about this.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that happened in the past a lot with Katarina, but that hasn't really been the case anymore for the upper half of 2022. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that was it then.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. Have a wonderful stream. I hope to, come on again sometime soon. And yeah, reach out to me anytime. And I'll see you guys on Twitter and on Reddit.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much again. And I would definitely love to do this more often. I think a lot of the questions that the community had got answered. So thank you so much. And yeah, we'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.